Happy Sunday and roll tide, Alabama. Big win last night over their arch nemesis, the biggest rival Alabama has, the Creighton Blue Jays. The Tide got out to an early lead, didn't really look back, although Creighton tried to sit there and fight with Alabama in the second half. Bama kept them at arm's length, and the Tide grabs the victory and improves on their record to 8-2 on the year. We've got a lot coming up here on Catfish Courtside. We're going to break down the game. We're going to talk about the transfer portal. We're going to talk about playing time, and we're going to get you set up for a couple of more non-conference games before that gauntlet of the SEC gets started in early January. Let's get going. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome into the channel, Catfish Courtside. I'm Chad Anderson. Hope you're doing well. And Alabama celebrating a win last night over Creighton. Final score 83-75. Alabama moves to 8-2 on the year. They're undefeated at home. They've won 33 of their last 35 at Coleman Coliseum. Creighton falls to 7-4. They are unranked at the moment. Don't let that confuse you, though. This team is an NCAA tournament team. This team 2 years ago made the Elite Eight. I don't remember exactly offhand where they got to last year in the tournament, but this is always a tournament team. McDermott, he does a fantastic job coaching them up, having them in the conversation year in, year out. So even though 7-4 and unranked, kind of like don't get down about the Oregon loss. I think we all realize now that Oregon was unranked when they beat Alabama. Now the Ducks are actually a really strong team, and that's been reflected in the rankings. Creighton, same thing. Don't let the lack of ranking fool you. The Blue Jays are a very talented squad. So last night, Bama taking down again the Blue Jays. If you look at last night's game, one thing that really caught my eye, and we've talked about this, we had the return, or I guess the debut, of Chris Youngblood, the transfer from South Florida, Tuscaloosa native, was the AAC Player of the Year last year, or co-AAC Player of the Year last season for the Bulls. It was unbelievable to actually see how much depth this team has now. No kidding. You lose Latrell Wrightsell, right? And he goes down. And I look at last night's box score, and you've got 11, 12 players who get into the game. Bama's like hockey lines right now. They're just rotating guys in nonstop. And if you take a look at the minutes, they had that 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 guys in double-digit minutes. And if you look at the two who didn't get double digits, one of those, which was surprising to me, was Mo Dibante. He has been unbelievable in non-conference. And so when you see what he's been able to do and how he's been able to put himself out there on the floor and defend, attack the basket, be involved, be physical, and he only had 4 minutes last night. Now, Houston Mallett was the other one with 8 minutes last night, but he just played his first game against North Carolina back on December 4th. So it's within reason that he wasn't on the floor for as long. But Dibante, the team is so deep. There are so many players. There are so many positions that can be filled. He ends up only seeing 4 minutes last night. So it's just really incredible how deep the team is and how they can shuffle people in and out and really not drop off at very many positions, other than, I would say, obviously, Mark Sears being on the floor is a big deal. Grant Nelson, because of his veteran ability and presence. Everybody else, though, they're all newcomers. Stevenson did play last year, but hasn't seen as many minutes. He's finally come on lately, offensively, able to hit some threes. But so many fresh bodies just constantly coming in and out of the lineup for Alabama. When I was watching, though, I have this is what NCAA sports has now done to me. And I do this with football. I now do this with basketball. You sit and you watch and you go, man, that guy is so good. So I'm talking about like Aiden Holloway has had a great non-conference run, especially recently for Alabama. He had a hell of a game against North Carolina. Labaron Philon has been fantastic at the point position. Clifford Amori, he's been a good presence. I think people have a few more expectations out of him, but he's been very good. And he's been that big guy that has caused a lot of problems. And when you look and see, like, man, some of these guys are on the bench for extended periods, or their box score isn't lighting it up, and everything doesn't point to them. And that's the day and the age that we live in with college athletics, with the NIL, with the transfer portal, with social media, with trying to get ready, obviously, for the NBA or the NFL. And you watch all of these games, and I can't help but think, I did this in football with Ryan Williams. You go, man, is that player happy that we won? And I'm not saying anybody is or isn't, but is that player happy that we won? Or is that player going, glad we won? My box score only shows 4 minutes and 2 points, or my box score shows 17 minutes, but I only got 3 field goal attempts. I didn't have any points, and I had 2 rebounds. And you start to wonder, could I take my talent and get a bigger, better looking box score somewhere else? And that's like the double-edged sword with depth. It's like, man, this team is so good. And then I worry about, is that guy going to be here next year? It's like you can't help but have that in the back of your head, or at least that's how I do, end up worrying about it. The only thing I will say, though, with basketball, completely different from football. Basketball, if you get the lottery guys, or you get some stud who comes in, highly ranked high school standout, comes in, dominates freshman year, he's going in the NBA draft, whether it's first or second round, and that determines, kind of his draft stock and if he's going to leave early or whatnot. In football, you have to stay or can't go to the NFL draft for 3 years out of high school. In basketball, it's a one and done. So with basketball too, there's just such faster turnover that I don't think it bothers people as much, or you expect it a little bit more. Like, you don't have the same 3 and 4 year run. Mark Sears, obviously the exception here, but you don't have that long run with a team like you do in football if they stay the entire time. So it's kind of funny. You're watching the basketball team, you're watching the depth, you're just amazed at how much is coming in and out of the court constantly, and what they're able to do talent-wise, switch things up, move people around. But I can't help but always worry about already what next year's team is going to look like. You're worried about the present, and that's what the portal, I think, has done to a lot of people mentally, and the NIL. But again, with basketball, it's very different. It's very different. So I'd love to know what you guys think on that, because I watch the game and I just sit here and go, man, I hope that Holloway comes back, or man, I hope Youngblood doesn't get pissed off and go somewhere else. So Alabama's had like 2 guys who really stood out as of late. If you go just off the top of my head, Colin Sexton and Brandon Miller, probably the best as far as it goes to making it into the NBA. Herb Jones has done fantastic in the NBA, but he was at Alabama for more than just the one and done. So you kind of have to adjust your mindset a little bit. On the flip side, Alabama had a lot of guys leave last year, or from last year's team, and Alabama's better team this year because of the recruiting class, and that goes with Nate Oates. And that's how quickly also, when you only have 5 positions on the court at any given time compared to 11 positions on each side, 22 total with football. So a little bit different. Bama, most notably, I would say, last year losing Griffin to Kansas. Pringle goes to South Carolina. But you have to ask yourself, would they be playing or starting or getting significant minutes? I mean, they were both good. They would be having minutes on the floor, especially Griffin, fantastic shooter. Pringle, a good physical body, but you're not losing a dominant player. And it's just really interesting to watch that and watch the depth and just how much Alabama can sub in and out. And it really stood out to me last night, and they seem to not lose a beat when they do that. So fantastic job by Nate Oates, by the Crimson Tide. Again, 83-75 over Creighton. All right, let's take a look. The other thing with playing time, we'll find out, because this team is already more in line chemistry-wise than they were a few weeks ago. Not that there was anything bad with the team. It's just getting used to playing with each other. So now you're a month in. You got to be happy with Alabama's stretch run from Purdue to last night, and only losing 2 games, one at Purdue, one against Oregon. So now you got a couple of more games, 3 more games before Alabama gets ready for Oklahoma to open up SEC play. We're going to talk about the SEC as well and other shows, and how dominant the Southeastern Conference is in basketball. It's literally insane. to the point that you could lose 6 games in conference this year and still win the SEC title. That's how nuts it is right now in the Southeastern Conference. All right, let's take a look at last night's box score for Alabama. Standouts, Mark Sears, 27 points on the night. He went 8 of 15 from the floor, 4 of 7 from beyond the arc, made 7 of his 8 free throws. As far as the on the defensive side, Alabama actually did not have a block last night, which is shocking because of the length and what they have as an inside presence. But also, Creighton has a couple of really good shooters, and then they have Kalkbrenner, who is 7'1", and so it's hard to block big guy inside like that, and that's the only one that's trying to do anything inside. So Crimson Tide turned it over less than Creighton yesterday evening, 11 times compared to their 13. We'll get to shooting in just a moment, but back to some individual numbers. Only 2 other players were in double figures. Like I said, Sears at 27, Labaron Philon had 16, and then Derrion Reid had 12 for the Crimson Tide. Other people did get in the books, though. Diabante Sherrill hit a 3. Youngblood hit his first 3 in a Crimson Tide uniform last night. Holloway last night scored 6 points. And then a couple of other starters. Grant Nelson, he only had 4, and Clifford Amori had 8 points for Alabama. Nelson actually led the way with 10 rebounds for the Crimson Tide, and steals. Philon had a couple of those, as did Youngblood, and Alabama pretty much stayed out of foul trouble. Not a lot of whistles in last night's contest. As we move over to the Creighton box score, Jackson McAndrew, he couldn't miss in the second half. Popped 5 threes out of 8 attempts, 16 points. Kalkbrenner, the big man inside, he's good, guys. He had a pump fake and a dribble drive. That's hard to see at 7'1", going against Amori at one point in the second half. He had 18. Stephen Ashworth, veteran for the Blue Jays, 39 minutes played last night, 20 points on the evening. Not a lot of production from the bench. And that's one of the things, like I said, that kind of stands out. When you look at Creighton's bench, they only had 8 points there. Alabama, on the other hand, they had 28 off the bench. So Crimson Tide, again, the depth really stands out for Alabama. Looking at the team totals in last night, it was actually Creighton who outshot Alabama the entire night in all 3 areas. Field goal percentage, Creighton 45 to Alabama's 43. 3-point land, Creighton 30% to Alabama's 20. Tough night shooting for the Tide from beyond the arc. Free throws, 81% for Creighton, 77 for Alabama, although the Tide did get 6 more attempts at the charity stripe. Bama out-rebounded the Jays 46-32, and that's really what can outweigh the shooting percentages. Alabama, more rebounds, more attempts, more putbacks, and that's what was able to give the Tide the advantage in the box score, or in the final score. Creighton shared the ball a little bit better, 16-13 on the assists. Bama, a couple of more steals. Creighton had 3 blocks. Turnovers, Alabama beat the Jays there with only 11. Creighton had 13 last night. Bama with more points in the paint at 44-34. One thing concerning, again, you give some credit to Creighton here. Alabama did not blow a large lead, but they let Creighton back in. Bama had a 27-10 lead after a Mark Sears 3-pointer in the first half, and then the Crimson Tide let it get down to as close as, I believe the closest it got was 6, maybe 7 points in the second half. But every time Bama tried to pull away, you could feel that Creighton just was not going to go away. They kept hanging around, and the Crimson Tide, again, able to keep them at arm's distance, but it wasn't the blowout, I guess, that it could have been. Coming up next for the Crimson Tide, they actually go back on the road. First time Alabama had been home since November the 11th, and that was against McNeese State with a 72-64 win. Bama does a rare thing. They go on the road to North Dakota. This is on Wednesday night, 8 o'clock. It's on CBS Sports Network. Of course, catch it on the Crimson Tide Sports Network. And then Bama will host Kent State on Sunday, the 22nd, and then host South Dakota State on Sunday, the 29th, before hosting Oklahoma to start the SEC slate on Saturday, January the 4th. And Oklahoma currently is ranked 13th in the nation and had a nice, easy win over their rivals, the Oklahoma State Cowboys, in last night's contest. So we'll have all the breakdowns for you and some shows in between. Alabama will talk about some recruiting, We'll look at the upcoming schedule. We're going to look at the SEC in general and just what it's going to look like for the Tide over the next 75 to 80 days heading in to March Madness. All right, from the mortgage side, wanted to share a brand new program. We've got 2 of them actually that is out right now. So you guys all know by now, I do mortgages. That's what I do. Licensed in Alabama, in Tennessee, and in Florida. Made it simple for you. Scan the QR code right there on the screen if you want to see if you can buy a home with 0% down. A couple of phone numbers up there. Email for you. Visit chadwickanderson.com. We've been helping people with this new program. We've been helping people refinance, get rid of credit card debt, saving $600 and $700 per month. It's been fantastic. So I hope you will reach out if you're in the market or want to check it out and see what your finances look like and what we could do to help you out. All right, that's it. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Thanks for joining on Catfish Courtside, and we'll talk to you on Thursday morning to recap Bama and North Dakota as the Tide goes on the road for an out-of-conference matchup Wednesday night. Roll Tide.